So,
what are we trying?
So, we've got this to live stream, and we live stream to YouTube and to Facebook.
Okay.
And so, how John set up in the past is I come here to Facebook. Now, when I got on this morning, it had like a new look, a new format. And I was like, I don't know. So I'm like, take me back to the old one, which it did. So we just copy the stream key right here, go back to this program, come over here, put the new stream key in, have the date, and hit OK. And then it kind of says that it's going to come here.
I just sent him the phone number, so he should be here. Just a second.
Come back to Facebook.
Are you calling yet?
He should be. I sent him the text message
There wasn't
with the phone number.
It's gonna work. Yeah. Anyway, I guess it's sort of a video, but it's just doing this. It takes its time. But I guess this is not what we're seeing. This is what it should be. Okay.
It's slowly updating.
Anyway, I didn't know if it was. And I guess it's sort of updating. But in the other room, John had one of these plugged in to the wall and into a specific outlet. I didn't know if over here that might be why.
No, it shouldn't, as long as it does have, it looks like you're still on the wireless there.
Mm-hmm. Anyway.
No worries. He'll take it over for you.
And that might be why.
That's not the right folder. Last time he had to find a pen so he can write down the access code. He must still trying to do that same thing.
So is this showing what's actually streaming, or is it still trying to load?
Looks like it could be this.
Does it look pretty normal as to what it normally looks like?
Yeah. New. Okay, so.
I'm gonna try this other port.
It's working.
Okay, so we've got about a 10-second minute or whatever, but it looks like it's good. looks like I guess we're good now.
Okay.
They needed you here.
It's all right. I was just down the street at least.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And so I just need to.
Yeah, just
Make sure that that's
it's not on the wireless until I can have a chance to update the wireless.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. I'll just be down at the library.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's cool. Go for it.
Okay, so if I lose any of you, just call me back on there. So if you lose your connection, and we can try that. See if it'll work in the meantime. So on the phone, so just so you know, everybody that we have in here, we've got Tammy Gallegos, Kurt Benj, Kendall Laws, Commissioner Maryboy, Commissioner Adams, and then Commissioner Gray is on the conference call. And so with that, I'll just turn it over. I don't know who wants to officiate the meeting. Commissioner Maryboy, it's all you.
Thank you very much, Max. Welcome and good morning, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order April 7th, 2020, and whatever the time we have there, Matt, let's go by that. And I'm sorry, everybody, but there's too many things happening out there, and we don't want to expose anybody to any kind of a bug. So we'll be doing our conference call for however long this is going to blow over. So with that, we'll go directly to our agenda. As you notice that on item number 1, electronic meeting ordinances, I think that's one of the items that we need to take an action on, so that way our viewing audience and also our members of the county community will understand why we are in this. So that way, if we can get this as an ordinance, we can continue to do this until this thing kind of quiets down. So to that, Matt, walk us through that one.
Okay, this one here is, this one was required by Governor Herbert. He had issued Executive Order 2020-5, suspending kind of all the enforcement of the provisions for the Open and Public Meeting Act, allowing for electronic meetings. We've gone through and set the requirements for our electronic meeting. So I'm just requesting approval for this. This allows us to have electronic meetings like this. If we have issues that come up, like a COVID outbreak or any other type of emergency, this allows us to meet individually as commissioners to call in through a system or other means of an electronic meeting. We do have to notify the public that we're doing that. It also in here has an anchor location. Anchor location is still here in Monticello at the Chamber of Commissions, unless this building is inoperable. So it doesn't allow us just to have an electronic meeting at any time. This is really for emergencies only type thing, but it lays down kind of the quorum needs, the public attendance, how we conduct our meetings. You'll notice today we don't have public comment on here. There's just no way that we can have members of the public in our meeting offering public comments yet. We're still trying to work on that. We've received public comments in email. Those have been sent to you before the meeting, and as we get them, we'll send them to you as well, so you have the public comments and the participation through that means. But other than that, we're just looking for approval for this so we can continue on through the meeting.
Commissioner Maryboy, I'll make a motion that we approve the electronic meeting ordinance that has been read by the county administrator.
Thank you, Bruce. Motion's been made by Commissioner Adams, and do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Commissioner Gray. Any other questions, comments to that effect? If there be none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item, Mac?
Okay, these are consent agenda items, and I'll go through each one and explain them. Again, on the consent agenda, this is a way to expedite all of the routine matters. If there's something on here that I go over that you want to pull off of the consent agenda and have a further discussion, we can do so. But typically the items that are placed on here for the consent, and you vote all of them at the same time through one motion. And so I'll go through those. You have the meeting minutes that have been provided. We made the corrections last time that you had requested. Commissioner Grayeyes, Commissioner Adams, those modifications have been made in those minutes, right? So we have those. We have the check registers, approving all of the expenditures for the month since the last meeting. You have a ratification of the interlocal agreement with the Navajo Nation for the school bus routes. This one we had all went down to Technos Post through a regional chapter meeting with President Nez and chapter officials, presidential staff, council delegates from the Navajo Nation. We're all there, as well as all three commissioners, to enter into this agreement. We had to bring it back to the county seat to formally execute. And so you have that here for ratification. You have a ratification for the Department of Heritage and Arts contract. This is a contract for historic preservation projects. It's really a pass-through from the state of Utah. $10,000 will go into the Historic Commission for the work that they're doing. I believe a majority of this goes to the Aljedo project, so the trading post. It's a match where they've been able to come with $10,000 of in-kind services, and then this $10,000 passes through the county and goes to that effort. The next one, you have a ratify a cross easement access for the roads building with Questar Gas, who is now Dominion Energy. This is something that you received in email, and we had signed it, allowing that easement for the gas line to go back to that new building down at the roads department. You have a Board of Health appointment here. Well, this is for the Health Service District. I need to make sure we get this correct. There's two different health boards that we have. This is for the San Juan County Health Service District. They've received 2 applications. Their board has gone through and chosen to select Doug Christensen to fill the vacancy. This is a 4-year appointment that expires in 2024. And then we've got the next one is the San Juan County Water Conservancy District. So I made sure that's right. San Juan County Water Conservancy District. They had 2 vacancies. Their board has gone through, looked at the 2 applicants. There were only 2 that applied. This is a 2-year appointment. The vacancies will be replaced by Terry Ecker of Blanding and Matt Sword of Mexican Hat. They were excited to get somebody from Mexican Hat that is willing to serve on that Water Conservancy District. The next one is an EDA grant opportunity that we would like to enter into. This is for the U.S. Economic Development and Administration. For us committing $8,300 to this grant, this participation, it allows us to receive up to $200,000 through this revolving loan fund, working through this Southeastern Utah Economic Development District. And so that's kind of what this is. So if we spend a little, we get a lot more, especially during this time of need. This will be something that will be able to help our small businesses, and so we felt that that was a good opportunity for us. The next one,
Matt, can I just say something about Southeastern Utah?
Yeah.
AOG. They also have revolving loan funds available for small businesses on an emergency basis due to the coronavirus. And it kind of goes hand in hand with this EDA grant. So
correct.
people can get a hold of Natalie Randall to access some of those needs if they need it.
Continuing forward on item I, this is a wheeler lease buyback for loaders for the road department. Each year we do this, we participate in this lease buyback program. We've turned in our 4 loaders to our previous contracted vendor. We pay $171,000 in the lease, and then there's a 1-year guaranteed buyback at the end of that year, or as long as we don't exceed 300 hours, they'll pay us $175,500 for the loader. So we actually make $4,500 on this type of an agreement. So it's a pretty good deal. You'll see more of these lease buyback programs come before you as we try to save money and throughout time. The next one you have is the county health insurance renewal agreements. This is something you had funded and we had brought before in the past. Now the agreements are coming. This provides our health coverage for our employees throughout the county. So this is just time for us to execute the agreements. We had committed to this earlier on in the year at a commission meeting, and now it's just finalizing everything. In here it also has the stop loss, which kind of is our insurance to our insurance. If our claims exceed a certain amount, then this stop loss comes in and pays for anything in excess, and kind of has the rules and the guidelines for that up to the 50%. And so you'll see in your packet not only those contracts with that, but the terms that applied that we had entered into earlier in the year. The final one.
One reason for that, Mac, is we are considered self-insured.
Correct.
So we pay all of our own costs up to the stop loss agreement, and then if anything goes over the stop loss, then we have insurance to cover that.
Correct. Yeah, appreciate that clarity on that. The final one is the San Juan County Aging and Adult Services 4-year plan. This is a requirement of Tammy. She submits this every year. It provides kind of that outlook for our aging and adult services that we provide for our senior citizens here in the county. She's updated that plan. This allows us to continue to seek and receive funding from the State of Utah Department of Human Services, Division of Aging and Adult Services. So that covers all of the consent items from A through K.
Go ahead with the new business action.
We would need a motion and approval.
I'll make a motion that we pass the consent item agreements, including the meeting minutes down through the San Juan County Aging Adult Service 4-year plan contracts, and those people who were identified to serve on the 2 boards that were mentioned within the consent items.
Thank you very much, Bruce. That is an order with the item number 2 that we've agreed to allow us to combine items like what Mr. Commissioner Adam has done from 1 all the way down from A to K. He is in order to make a motion to cover all those. And do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Commissioner Gray Eyes. And any other comment, questions? Remember, when we vote on this, we don't go back and discuss that, so it's already a done deal. So if there's any other discussions or comments of any items, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Thank you very much. Unanimous. Now, Matt, go with item number 3, business actions.
Okay, so the first item on here, and we'll take these separate for separate approvals. The first one that you're looking at on item 3A is our noxious weed ordinance. This ordinance here applies to the whole entire county. We do have a weed control board that helps us, kind of provides that direction, and the state of Utah also works to select which weeds are noxious weeds. We receive grant funding for this. In the policy, if the nuisance is not removed within 5 days, then the county will start working with the owner, or we'll remove it ourselves and then charge the owner for that at the owner's expense. And then the owner will have to reimburse us within 30 days of the removal of that nuisance. There is in here lien for payment against the property if they don't pay us after 90 days. But there is also a right to a hearing provision in here where they can request a hearing to the weed control board or to the county legislative body if there's not a weed control board. So it kind of allows them some flexibility in and out through this appellate process, but this overall helps us govern the programs that are set forth for at the state level regarding regulating the noxious weeds throughout the county, and in light of the grant funds that we also receive every year that helps pay for the spray and the chemicals that we use, as well as staff that go out and spray for them. So that's a summary of the ordinance.
Okay, you want to go item by item, or do you want to go through the whole list before we take any action?
We got to go item by item on these.
All right, commissioners, on item number 8, do I have a motion?
I motion.
I'll
By
second.
Commissioner Gray Eyes, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Adams, thank you very much. Any comment? If there be none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, next item there, Matt.
Okay, this is the county emergency declaration. With this, this whole document is declaring a state of local emergency due to the infectious disease COVID-19 novel coronavirus. We have declared a public health emergency, but we haven't declared a county emergency. Now that we do have COVID-19 present in San Juan County, I believe last count yesterday was we had 6 individuals that are here and have this. By declaring a local state of emergency, this allows us then to work with not only the state but as well as FEMA. If there's funding needs or any resource needs, we're able to reach up through the state into FEMA to receive that assistance. So that's what this document is for.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Gray Eyes, do I have a second?
I'll second this for the purpose of discussion.
Just for the discussion. Okay, Commissioner Adams, what would you like to make a comment to this?
I've had some people contact me from around the county and even outside the county concerned with Kirk's order to suspend all bear hunting in the county. Kirk, you might want to get on and speak to this issue. I have been told, and whether it's true or not, I haven't had a chance to really find out whether or not. We are the only county in the state that has suspended bear hunting, and the comments that I'm getting from those people who are bear hunters and have drawn tags inside the county is that the governor had told people, you know, you need to stay home or get out and go fishing and sightseeing where you're away from a group of people. You need to be in small groups. I'm not, and so to this point, I told him that was kind of your call, Kirk, and I think legally it is from what I've read. They want to know if there's any kind of an appeal process to this order for bear hunting.
Yeah, that's something that I've heard those questions as well, and consulted with our county attorney, Kendall Laws, about that. Officially, the order that we passed when we declared a public health emergency was consistent with the governor's order, which the governor had indicated that people should abstain from leisure travel. And our order was that leisure travel is prohibited. And then we sat down with the sheriff's office and the county attorney to try to interpret what we felt fell under leisure travel. At this time, we feel like bear hunting is a recreational activity, and we didn't feel comfortable issuing an exemption for one recreational activity without having to open up the possibility of evaluating every recreational activity individually. And so at this point, we felt, for the sake of consistency, it made sense to anything that's categorized as recreation is technically suspended during this public health emergency.
Okay, I'm not a bear hunter. I don't want to go bear hunting, but I'm gonna voice this concern in this way. And the people have contacted me, are guides. They do this for a living. They take people out and help them find bears and help them shoot the bears and take care of them. So they're indicating to me that this has impacted their ability to make a living just like everybody else. That this is not a recreational activity or a leisure activity, that to go out and bear hunt, they have contracted with people to guide them in almost a one-on-one or a very, very small group of people. And they want to know why San Juan County is the only county in the state that's restricting them to make their living by guiding people to bear hunt.
Yeah, well, when you think about this, if the governor has passed an ordinance on certain areas of commuting across, and if other county is exercising and continue to hunt, I see why we should be any different from anybody else. And then, of course, our biggest fear is commuting across one another. But this is going to be in the mountains. So on that particular area, the other thing that was just barely been released to us is that certain animals are starting to attract this particular virus. So where does that leave us? Kendall or somebody?
So, Commissioners, a couple of things. First, I think it's important to and I'm not saying that, I think we all just need to understand that the county emergency declaration that the Commission is looking at here is from the county perspective, from the financial, the budgetary, the emergency services, those type of issues. The health department, the public health officer, which is Kirk in our health organization, has responsibilities and has authority that is separate and distinct from the authority of the county commission. He has a whole section, 2 sections in the code that are what dictate what he can and can't do. And so I think that for purposes of the discussion, I think this is a good discussion, but I think at the end of the day, we need to recognize that Kurt has a different set of, he has different authority in this situation once we're dealing with a communicable disease situation. I think we need to keep that in mind. Now, with regards to the bear hunting and as an exception or an exemption, I think it's important to also recognize that there were guides as well as other groups that had high dollar guiding for river rafting on the San Juan River, that the BLM as part of this and in an effort to support the county's decision to restrict their leisure travel to the county, they canceled those events and those high dollar guide tours down the San Juan River. So if we were to make an exemption or an exception for bear hunting, for example, like the southeastern Utah has done, because they've restricted it the same that we have, but they've made an exemption for bear hunting only. And I think what that does is that opens us up to a lot more legal liability and some challenges, because other organizations who have, or groups or businesses that have paid just as much money or have just as much money on the line as the bear hunters, they've been shut down as well. And so we went in discussing it with Kirk. We didn't think that it was appropriate, and I've deferred in these conversations to Kirk because he's the professional and he's the one who knows public health. I'm just there to answer his legal questions, but I didn't think it was appropriate to start piecemealing which organizations we were going to support or allow, which activities we were not. Additionally, the governor has said that he has come out and said a couple of things that I think are supportive of Kirk's decision from the public health side of things. One of those is that state parks are only open to access by residents of the county in which they are located. That would seem to indicate that he is expecting people to stay home. You need to stay home. There's also been a lot of discussion about essential activities and essential businesses. And at the end of the day, if river guiding, for example, is not essential, then the discussion was that meant that bear hunting wasn't as well. And so I'd be happy to answer any additional questions that you might have, Bruce or Commissioner Ray. But that's kind of a background on this discussion.
And if I could add, this is Kirk again. In my most recent conversation with Southeast, it looks like they were uncomfortable with their exemption for bear hunting, and they're reevaluating that. We were both working with the Division of Natural Resources to help issue refunds to people who had paid for those permits. But I do recognize that there are huge issues that we're facing right now with how these quarantine type orders are affecting our economy, and it's not something I take lightly. I am deeply concerned about approaching this in the most balanced way that we can to both protect life and protect our local economy to whatever degree we can.
Thank you.
Okay, can I just respond? I realize that, Kendall, you bring up the river runners and things like that. I understand that. Those have all been restricted in other counties and other parts of the state. The question I'm trying to answer for these people is, why is San Juan County the only county to restrict bear hunting? I mean, I understand the governor's order, I understand Kirk's position. They're just asking me, why are we treating the bear hunters different than all other counties in the state of Utah? That's the question that I'm trying to answer for them.
So the answer that I would give them, Bruce, and I would be happy to give it to them directly as well. I've actually talked to several of them that have called my office, and the answer to that is we're not treating the same that we're treating every other visitor to San Juan County. So the fact that San Juan County is being accused of or being questioned about treating all visitors equally is fine. I would rather us be accused or be pointed at as treating all visitors equally than the county health department or the county in general as picking and choosing which activities, which visitors are allowed and which aren't. I think it's also important to note that the governor in one of his more recent discussions about the same time, actually I believe it was the same day that this order went into place, he deferred to county health departments or local health officers and local health departments as being able to make restrictions or make rules that are fitting for the problems that their county faces. For example, you have Summit County as well as some others now who have stay-at-home orders, more lockdown procedures for everybody than San Juan County does. So they have taken and decided that is something that is necessary and proper for their locale, just like San Juan County has decided that if we're going to restrict visitation, we're going to restrict visitations fairly across the board and not piecemeal and pick and choose. We're going to decide to treat everybody fairly and everybody equally across the board.
Never argue with a lawyer or a health officer. The bear is dead.
Okay, any more comment? Commissioner Grayani, do you want to weigh in on this? If not,
I think my comment was
Hold on.
that
Go ahead, Commissioner Grass.
my reference to that situation with bear hunting is that there is a provision in the emergency declaration funding to recovery. So that is what I'm thinking. If they're losing economically, not to be sports other than economically, if it's sustaining families, then I would say, yeah, go look for that. But I don't know what the product of those would be used for.
Commissioner Adams and Gray Eyes and Mary Boy, I do know as far as businesses, there are a lot of small business loans available, and if these outfitters are running this as a business, there is some economic help there that would help them during this time. They just need to get in contact with Natalie Randall and she can help them fill out those loans. I do believe the loans are forgivable loans right now to help businesses recover through this.
okay. Sounds sounds like we have enough discussion on it. We have our input from our attorneys and a position that we held as a commissioner to commute with our people. So at this point in time, let's put it to a vote. All those in favor?
In favor of what?
Supporting the ordinance.
So this is for the declaration, this is declaring a state of local emergency due to the infectious disease COVID-19 novel coronavirus. This is separate from the public health order. This is just the county declaring a state of emergency.
Aye.
I'll make a
We can
motion
give you
that
a-
we pass it.
Second.
Aye. Debbie?
Aye also.
Thank you very much.
So we got 3 ayes on that? 3 ayes? 3 ayes, okay, so we declared a state of local emergency due to the COVID-19. Thanks, Tammy, for your work on that, by the way.
I'd just like to make a comment about
We voted.
the good work that our county staff is doing, that our health officers throughout the county, all of those who put themselves in danger, they need to be complimented for their reaction to the coronavirus, and I just want to compliment everybody that's been involved.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
Hello.
Well said.
Hello. Well,
Okay, Matt, the next item?
Okay, the next item, and you've received, and we sent out to you a lot of, or not a lot, but some public comments regarding this item for or against on this budget resolution. And I'll go through and explain this budget resolution. Hopefully we can clear up some of the concerns out there. This is a resolution directing and authorizing San Juan County Chief Administrative Officer to make the following administrative changes to the county budget, programs, and contracts. And this is just a summary. I'm not going to read it all just because of the electronic means, but on here, the county recognizes that there's a significant economic and personal needs of our citizens, our businesses, and the public in general throughout the entire state, but more specifically here in the county. Back at the end of last year, we prepared and presented the possibility of increasing taxes on both personal and commercial property taxes. In consideration, the county will not increase our rates to businesses and citizens as originally proposed in the Truth in Taxation's hearing this year. So basically, we'll remain, like kind of the common term here is rate neutral. We'll take any new growth that we typically receive in that rate, but we will not be adjusting our rates to what we proposed in that Truth in Taxation hearing. And so we're holding off on those overall tax increases. We've prepared and presented our annual budget to the citizens of the county and recognize the dire circumstances that they are faced with as well. And we're notifying and directing all of our county departments to halt all expenditures, purchases, and contracts other than those that are deemed essential. Essential expenditures and purchases are those deemed critical and vital to the health, safety, and well-being of the public and citizens of the county until further notice. Consultation should be made with the county's chief administrative officer if there are questions regarding essential, critical, and vital purchases from our department heads or county staff. The county will restrict and reallocate funding originally appropriated for the PRCA rodeo, the county mud ball, scheduled conferences, travel, trainings, and non-essential allocations, which would place our employees and citizens in groups larger than 10 people, and cancel all the aforementioned events for the time being. The county will look at adjusting the timeline and budget of the fair. Most of these events, if you looked at them, were taking place in June, July, and now you have the fair in August. We may have to change that and push that a little bit further out, or even shorten the timeline of the fair. So this year's fair may be modified appropriately. Also in here, the Chief Administrative Officer is directed to notify all cities and towns within the county to the cancellation of all executed interlocal agreements, or, and this is an important part, I want the public and especially our cities and towns to hear this one, or renegotiate those agreements to a point that is advantageous to the county, which requires county participation in services such as airport capital maintenance, road maintenance, snow removal, or any other covenant therein, including allocation of the additional county transit room tax funding, allocations based on available budgets, which will be reallocated to shore up the county's budget. And here you direct me, the Chief Administrative Officer, to negotiate those specific elements in the interlocal agreements, and I'm fine for any assistance or help that you'd like to offer me in doing so, but we do want to recognize that in those agreements there are mutual aid agreements that we need to continue and support our cities and towns with those. We will continue those. It's not like we're canceling those and getting rid of them. We just we need to renegotiate some of the terms within those. And so that kind of puts everything on our budget on hold, as well as we also ask the cities and towns to also do the same thing with us, but more importantly, would like to partner with our cities and towns as we pull back TRT funding. Would like to create some grant opportunities for our local businesses by pulling everybody together, trying to get those resources that we do have available that we can get out to our communities, especially our businesses that are impacted with this, and try to form some type of assistance with them. Earlier, you approved that grant opportunity with EDA. Would like to bring that money coupled together and see what we can do to create a new program that will assist our businesses throughout all of the county, not just specific cities and towns. And so we would be looking on a broad base, and so we ask for that partnership to be formed with those. We have an economic board that will be getting going again, so that we can create those programs and those grant resources to issue to those businesses. And so part of that, this resolution is that as well. In the interlocal agreements, we've always issued recreation funds. Each year we go through and we issue recreation funds to cities, towns, including the chapters. Up to $144,000 goes out towards recreation funds. In there, we have a requirement that those recreation funds be spent towards youth recreation programs. Well, right now, youth recreation, they can't even get together to play Little League baseball or softball or whatever the case is, and so would like to modify that and send out a letter to our cities and towns and our chapters as well, that those recreation funds can now be used for emergency relief, emergency purposes that they have within, with that same caveat that they're going to have to just demonstrate where those funds have been spent. In the interlocal agreement, it doesn't allow for those. It doesn't allow for the recreation funds to be spent for that. And so that's where we need to modify, renegotiate these agreements, so at times like this we have that mutual aid opportunities that exist in there. And so hopefully that helps a little bit, just knowing kind of the premise behind this. But when I look at the county's needs, by not increasing the taxes here in the county, that means we're going to have to tighten our belt, not even tighten our belt, we're going to have to do some drastic remodification to our budget to see where we can come up with this fund. As we cancel some of these events, that'll provide some of the fund, but it's not going to provide everything. And that's kind of the concern. If we continue to issue out TRT and participate in these things like capital airport improvements, things that we don't have money for, especially when I've got a boiler downstairs that hasn't been inspected since 2016, things like that we've got to take care of within the county ourselves, taking care of our own county needs first. Last year during the snow removal, we got several complaints and calls from the unincorporated areas where we're not removing snow, but the emphasis was in the cities, which isn't bad. It's just where are our county resources, and taking a better look at how overall we're managing this process throughout the whole entire county. So hopefully that's a little bit better understanding of what we're doing with this resolution, but primarily it's to notify that we're not going to be increasing taxes to those proposed certified tax rates, and that we're going to be restricting our budget and looking at any opportunity throughout the county with the cities and towns to help pull in this and hopefully decrease the expenditures so that we can avoid drastic financial issues. Any questions?
Thank you, Mac. Do I have a motion for discussion?
Yeah, I want to have some discussion on this item, but maybe we'll wait until the noon whistle quits blowing.
Do I have a second?
No, I want to have
So you made a motion, we're just looking for the second. Motion for discussion.
a second for discussion only.
Okay. Acknowledge. Go ahead, sir.
I've had a lot of discussion, a lot of calls with residents of the municipalities, and so, Mac, I wonder if we look a little bit extreme on the very last paragraph on page 1 that talks about directing you to notify all the cities within the county to cancel all executed interlocal agreements. I think our intent is not so much to say we're not going to have any interlocal agreements with the counties, but it appears like that's what we're saying.
Okay.
And so it leaves them with some uncertainty if we just say we're going to cancel these interlocal agreements. Maybe that ought to just say, rather than cancel all executed interlocal agreements, just cross that part out and go to where it says we direct you to notify the towns that we want to renegotiate those agreements rather than cancel them. I don't think they'll be quite so threatened, because I think they feel like if we're canceling them, there's a period of limbo where they have no agreement and they may not have any agreement. And I don't think that was really our intention, is to leave them up in the air without agreement. I think from the county's standpoint, our position might be we can identify some essential services in every community. Snow removal is probably an essential service in Monticello and Blanding. Maybe not quite as essential in Bluff, but it could be. Maybe that those essential services like snow removal, fire, those are essential services that we ought to help the cities with funding, and they ought to help us with what they can outside the cities in the counties. And so, we renegotiated an interlocal with Blanding, I think, in 2018. It was at 18 or 16?
2018 is when that was?
2018, so that's probably a pretty good template for what an agreement ought to include. But I think even those folks would agree if the county just doesn't have the money this year to put into their fire equipment fund, and we talk to them and say, look, when we have the money, we're willing to participate, but if we're trying to do a bare bones budget, we just don't have the money this year. And what is the condition of your fire truck right now? Is it, I believe both Monticello and Blanding have fairly new equipment. They might be able to go a year without paying into that fund and still agree to help the county outside of the city limits. So the same thing with TRT. If we're not collecting it, then the cities probably aren't collecting it. And I think they get 1% TRT, and we get what we get. But I appreciate the effort on the county to say, look, we'll take some of our TRT money and set up some kind of an emergency grant situation for small businesses throughout the county. And it might have a cap on it of so many dollars or something, but if you have been impacted because of the coronavirus and you've lost money and we have some TRT money that we could help on an emergency basis, I like that idea.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a good idea, but I talked to one official, and he told me about an experience he had with another community on the other side of the state where they have a policy where everybody in the county, every homeowner in the county or every individual in the county pays a fee for EMS or pays a fee for dispatch services, and it might be $3 to $5 every so many months. And the county that is doing that is in pretty good shape when it comes to funding their EMS and their dispatch and some of their emergency services. I know that fees translate into taxes, but there are just some things that you've got to provide, and I don't know how else you do that. So maybe when it comes to EMS and 911 and those ambulance service and those kind of things, maybe the county ought to be looking at a fee structure, and we ought to get with the cities, and maybe during this whole renegotiation process, that ought to be some of the discussion. I think that was a fairly good suggestion that was made to me. It's not my idea. I don't want to take credit for it, and the individual who came up with the idea is, I'd be glad to give them credit for it. But it just looks to me like we could do this in a less threatening way.
Yeah.
For the municipalities. I think I've heard from Love people, I've heard from Monticello people, I've heard from Blanding people, and I think that would give them a little bit of relief in that paragraph, rather than notifying them that we're going to cancel the interlocal agreement. We just notify them that we're going to renegotiate that, and I don't know how much needs to be renegotiated on the Blanding agreement because it was done recently enough, but it could certainly be some kind of a template for renegotiate. I don't think Monticello's agreement, I think it was negotiated in 2002, so it certainly needs some attention, and then obviously
Bluffs.
we need to do something with the bluff agreement.
Yeah.
But those would be my suggestions at this point, before we pass this resolution.
So I agree. It totally makes sense to take that portion out of there. So we modify
Acting
that
Commissioners,
language on there.
Interject.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go right ahead.
So apparently when the agenda was posted on the public notice website, it directed people that if they emailed comments, that those comments would be about any item on the agenda, that those comments would be read for the first 3 minutes into the agenda. Certainly in electronic meetings as well as any other meeting, we don't have a requirement to do public comment under state law. However, because that was advertised on the public notice website for the state for this meeting, I just want to interject here. It was just barely brought to my attention, and I verified that. We probably at some point during this meeting need to read the first 3 minutes of those comments.
Okay.
Good point. Whenever time you get on the phone, could you state your name? Not for me, but we need to keep track of name and who says what on the minutes. So please state your name when you get on the phone.
That was Kendall Laws.
Okay. Thank you, Kendall. Good point, Bruce. I do agree with you, and I understand. And now what about Gray Eyes? Do you want to weigh on this?
I would
If not,
think that this is
I
great.
guess all those in favor.
Hold on, Commissioner Gray Eyes is speaking. Go ahead,
Okay.
Commissioner.
Yeah. My recommendation is to, I don't know if the law requires recalling the budget, fiscal year budget.
No, we would just make an amendment to it. So you're allowed to make amendments and modifications. When you receive grant funds, you have to amend the budget. We would just do that. In the resolution, it talks about bringing that budget back to you guys.
In their regards, I would go ahead and agree to direct the administrator to address and the fiscal year 2020 budget in terms of adjusting and reprogramming to the extent to accommodate the San Juan County government and related programs.
Okay. Well, Mac, I believe that Bruce has directed you to go through some protocols, and
So,
also Willie is also recognizing some other amendments to the resolution. So, could you be able to do that for the record?
Commissioner Adams has asked on here that we modify and it's the 8th whereas in that resolution, that we modify that language in there to where it would state the chief administrative officer is directed to notify all cities and towns within the county that we will renegotiate those agreements or the interlocal agreements to a point that is advantageous to the county.
Let's leave that part out of it too.
Advantageous to the county?
Yeah, let's say
Okay.
we're gonna renegotiate the agreements,
We'll
which the
renegotiate,
county participate in.
which require county participation in services such as airport capital maintenance, road maintenance, etc.
It looks too heavy-handed to say advantageous for the county. It needs to be a cooperative agreement between the cities and counties, and both sides need to benefit from this interlocal agreement.
Correct.
I guess is what I'm trying to say, Matt.
It does. It has to be a win-win for both.
Yeah, it has to be a win-win.
Okay. And then in here, going to Commissioner Grayeye's comments, down at the very last whereas on here, it's the Board of San Juan County Commissioners direct staff to perform the necessary budget reductions within their appropriate budgets and work with the county's clerk auditor staff in preparation for a budget adjustment and allocation to be approved as soon as possible in a future commission meeting. And so I have what Commissioner Greyeyes is asking in that final whereas.
I've got one other thing, Kenneth.
That's fine.
In the
That's fine.
whereas at the top of page 2, Mac, whereas the chief administrative officer is directed to negotiate those elements in the interlocal agreement specifically to emergency services, fire, emergency medical, and 911, and develop a fee schedule that is acceptable to the cities, that could be presented to the citizens as a possible way to fund those services.
Okay. And I've seen that in other counties, kind of like you mentioned. where
Okay.
They do have that available for even landfill operations, things like
Yeah.
that. And so yeah, I can make those changes, that's no problem. That makes sense. And that will clarify and hopefully alleviate some of the concerns. I think when I look at the agreements in general, the bluff interlocal that we've been working on this whole entire time is probably, for me, the best of both worlds. It's a win-win, but it also makes sure that everybody is in that type of
Other
situation.
services still available for them.
As
Well,
far as
I think the
comments.
agreement would be good with those changes because it creates win-wins for the county and the city, and it also gets the county and the city back talking and trying to mutually solve some of the budget problems, but it also addresses some of the needs of small businesses and an ability to set up a grant program from the county using TRT funds. And I like the fact that we're not gonna raise taxes. I think that was controversial with the citizens in January, and so I wanna make sure that everybody understands that we have no intention of increasing those taxes. I know it's a big disappointment to limit what we're gonna do with rodeo and fairs and those kind of things, but frankly, those things are not essential things, but we may be able to fund something on a smaller basis, depending on what happens with COVID-19. So I think this is kind of the right direction to be taking right now with the county.
Now, before we vote on here, or make a motion to approve or deny the resolution, I can go through, kind of like Kendall had asked our attorney, that we read the public comments in here? So I have what was given to me before the meeting. If anything's come in since then, I won't have those. Okay, looks like John David will have those if I don't touch on it. And so, if I may, Commissioner, I'll go ahead and just read each one of these.
Yes, read the changes and the recommended language into the record so we can act on it.
Okay, so here's the first public comment. This was from Anthony Lott. And this was, let's see how to do this. This was addressed, came in to Natalie. I'm hoping I'm following the correct route here. Would you please pass along my comments on the proposal to withdraw the existing agreements between San Juan County and the towns of Monticello, Blanding, and Bluff? I'm deeply concerned about any proposal that would complicate the current relationships between our county, our towns, at a time when our interconnectedness has never been more important. We are weeks from the local peak of the international pandemic, which will strain our ability to care for one another as neighbors, citizens, and representatives. Our attention should be on minimizing the suffering as the wave approaches us, not redrafting policy. There will be time for thoughtful consideration of the particulars in interlocal agreements when we exit the crisis. I know that today I live in Bluff and represent San Juan County, and if someone calls 911 in my service area, I get in a county truck and I go help. If something happens to the understanding between my town and my county, it will create confusion in my job. Are the trucks mine to drive? Are my firefighters covered by workers' comp if they are injured while cutting their neighbors out of a wreck? Will our EMTs be supplied with the protective equipment they will need in order to transport the rash of COVID-19 patients and to not drag the sickness back to their families? Will they even be able to take the local ambulance, and will my family in White Rock have to wait for one to come from the county seat? Confusion in emergency services can have disastrous effects, even when the disaster is much smaller than the one at the doorstep. Thank you all for your public service. I understand that the job you do is not an easy one. And that was from Anthony Lott. The next one from Catalin Harris. This is in response to item 3C on the agenda for tomorrow's meeting. I urge you not undo the interlocal agreements. It is not an appropriate time to bring this to the table when your community members are not able to attend meetings and are working diligently to assist the surrounding communities in response to COVID-19. Interlocal agreements assist in community partnerships and aid in the coordination between cities, counties' COVID-19 response. As a Bluff resident, I ask you to please table this discussion so we can continue to work together at this time of COVID-19 response.
Who was that one there?
Caitlin Harris. The next one is from Don DeLego.
How many of those do you have, Matt?
Oh,
How many of those do you have, Matt?
8 more, 9, 10.
There's 7 on the email.
Well, those should have been read into the record from the beginning before we make any adjustments to the resolution, so that way it reflects to it.
So that's
personally, I think that we have an item for us that we're dealing with, and Commissioner Adams and Commissioner Gray Eyes have made some modification to the resolution. Those are the ones that need to be read into the record, and the one that you have there should have been read into the record from the beginning. So we're kind of late in that effect. So what I need you to do is read that, the recommended languages into the record so we can act on it. And I believe that we talked about the Bluff issue, that we don't need to act on it, but we need to continue to serve with the ambulance and other emergencies with all the small communities and towns. So we will get back to that until this thing blows over. Right now, it's just, we've got so many things that we're dealing with.
okay. So I can read just those ones relating to the interlocal agreement. You've received these comments in your email before. So the one I just read from Caitlin, that came to you yesterday in email. If you'd like, I can just read the ones for this agreement specifically, which are the rest.
I just barely stated, but yeah, go right ahead. And
Okay.
do what
I think that's
you
what,
feel necessary.
yeah, that's what our attorney is recommending, that we read these.
It was just for clarification.
Kendall and whoever attorney is there, make sure that we all understand that any other comments like that, especially an emergency meeting like this conference call, which just barely pass an ordinance up here to stick to the action items, and any items that we talk to, just like these comments that's coming in, we can get that from the get-go. So that way, that gives us a guidance to what kind of a recommendation that we make. Right now, we have a resolution that's been modified and ready to go, and we're going back and spending some time to see what people's comments are. We know what they are because we do get them, and also we do concur with what they feel. But it just prolongs the issue, and right now, by the time we get all the comments, then there's going to be another recommendation to remodify the resolutions again by the end of the comments that we do. So just remain that. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Okay. Kendall, do you have something to say on that, or you okay?
Yeah, Commissioner Maryboy, I just want to clarify or make it clear why Mac needs to read them into the record, and it should have been done at the beginning of the agenda. The agenda that I was sent, didn't have the language on there that is included on the public notice website. And public notice website, where the public sees the agenda, says that if they email their comment in prior to the meeting, then they would, the first 3 minutes of those comments would be read into the record. And that was brought to my attention after the meeting started, and so I went and looked, and the public notice website does in fact say that. So because the public notice agenda says that, in order to comply with the Open and Public Meetings Act, we have to comply with what was posted on the public notice website. So I know it's coming late, and it seems awkward to have it presented in this fashion because it should have been done at the beginning, but it wasn't brought to my attention that that's what was on the public notice website, because on the copy of the agenda that I saw, it did not have that language. And so that's why Matt's just doing it to check the box so that there aren't any allegations of the county not complying with the Open and Public Meetings Act.
Exactly. Well, that's the reason why we just adopted action number 1, which is electronic meeting ordinances. Anything that we don't have on the agenda here, we don't just throw things into the agenda at the last minute. You have to act on it to make the agenda be alive and recognized for the record. So you're right, if those comments should have been there, we should have had a comment written on the agenda, so that way we can reflect to the comments that we have that Mac's reading. Pretty much, otherwise we're just going to be tracking all over the agenda just for the show, because these are action items.
I don't disagree with you, Commissioner. I think it's important to know that there isn't necessarily a right for the public to comment in public meetings, but there is a right if it's advertised as such. And so, since it was advertised on the agenda item on the public notice website, then it does require us to comply with that. This is the first time that we've done an electronic meeting in this situation, so I think Mac and I and everybody else can work together to make sure that the next agenda is maybe more clear in how it's advertised. But because it was advertised that way, it requires us to do it. So I think Matt can quickly read through those to make sure that they're in the record, and then therefore we complied with the Open and Public Meetings Act, and then we can just move on with the agenda.
I agree with you. I have determined my position is to make sure that I have a perfect guidance to conduct the meeting, and that's all I'm saying. So go right ahead, Mac.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the misinformation from the agenda from our public notice website. And so we'll make sure that we get that right, that it's consistent in our message, but completely agree with our attorney that if it's stated in one place, it's better to err in caution, especially with some of the issues that we're faced with here in this county. Continuing forward with them. The next one that I got is from Kathy Carlson. It has come to my attention that there will be a vote that could cancel the interlocal agreements with Bluff. I understand that this would affect the mutual aid agreements for emergency services. This is very concerning to me. There is a health crisis in our country, and this would be a very poor time to pull Bluff EMS and fire from our town. I am an EMT in Bluff and have been for about 40 years. I would take it serious to be able to provide services in my area of the county, not just Bluff, but the Navajo Reservation as well. These are my people and I want to continue to serve them. Our town cannot afford to take over the necessary services at this time. Please consider and please vote to keep the agreement in place. Next one from Justin Holland. I'm writing both as a citizen as well as an emergency provider, fire and EMS. In Bluff, it has been brought to my attention that the county commissioners will be voting today on the interlocal mutual aid agreements for the use of the emergency services. Though it is somewhat unclear what the voting might look like, as much as the county, our community, as well as our surrounding communities is quiet, isolated, and distanced from resources, this possibility of these agreements being canceled or altered in some way has potentially devastating consequences on our ability to provide services to our community. As voting has taken place, please take into consideration how these agreements help our communities, which in turn helps keep the broader community within the county healthy. Again, that was from Justin Holland. I got from Mayor Ann Leppanen, County or Commissioner Chairman Mary Boy, Commissioner Adams, Commissioner Gray Eyes. On behalf of the town of Bluff, I respectfully urge you to vote no on the resolution that would cancel already executed interlocal agreements. Passing such a resolution during a time of a worldwide pandemic could cause additional irretrievable economic and physical harm to the citizens of San Juan County. Bluff executed interlocal agreements includes a mutual aid provision which is needed to protect the safety and welfare of their community. The Bluff community extends south of the Bluff town limits, and the town's emergency responders provide coverage to the south when needed and available. Canceling and renegotiating the terms of already executed interlocal agreements will result in using valuable time and resources that are already strained due to the current crisis. Voting no on the resolution would allow for the municipalities to work with the county administrator in reviewing what the county feels needs to be realigned. It allows the municipalities adequate time to review their budgets. The commission agenda for Tuesday, April 7th, 2020 does not include the discussion in tomorrow's work session about the resolution. I assume that this was inadvertent oversight in the preparation of the agenda. Thank you for careful consideration of the resolution. Ann Leppanen, resident and mayor of Bluff. This one here, public comment. This is approved by the mayors of all three San Juan County communities. In previous commission meetings, the idea of canceling interlocal agreements has been discussed. This has been done at same time as interlocal agreements was signed with the Navajo Nation for road maintenance and school bus routes. Interlocal agreements have been in place between the cities and San Juan County for decades to the mutual benefit of all parties and most importantly the citizens we all represent. They memorialize cooperation between government agencies and provide for more efficient and less costly public services for the taxpayers. As the mayors of the communities in San Juan County, we urge you to continue to work with the cities and towns and continue the spirit of mutual cooperation using interlocal agreements. The canceling of these agreements would result in duplication of services and unnecessary building and costs increases for all residents. We recognize the financial situation we all find ourselves in currently, but canceling these agreements in the midst of uncertainty of global pandemic would not be a wise decision. Please continue to work with us to provide services to our residents rather than throwing out decades of mutually beneficial cooperation. That's sincerely Ann Leppanen, Bluff Mayor, Tim Young, Monticello Mayor, Joe B. Lyman, Blanding Mayor. Let's see. comments I all read. Let me check to see if
Thank
there's...
you.
I think there's still a couple more.
Read you.
Hold on, there's still a couple more. I'm almost there, promise you. I've got two more in my hand, and then John David can check to see if he's got any more.
Mac, I don't know that you need to read any if they weren't received before the meeting began. I think the way that it's written on the public notice website, it's and in anticipation for people doing it prior to the meeting starting.
Okay, I think the last one was received at
Thank you, Kendall.
10:25 from Cheryl Bauer. So let me read that one. She's a council member in Blanding, so it'd be good to hear hers. Says, thank you, commissioners and county staff, for your time. First, I want to commend Natalie Randall and your economic development team and Kirk Benj and your public health department for the continued efforts to share information with county residents. Their efforts are appreciated and should be recognized. I would like to comment regarding your item titled Budget Resolution. There is much covered in this resolution and cannot address in all 3 minutes, but I would highly recommend that the commissioners review this resolution carefully. It gives a large amount of power to the county administrator regarding decisions that county commissioners should be involved in. Times of uncertainty and pandemic is not the time for commissioners to wash their hands of difficult decisions regarding budgets and cuts. It's the time when you should jump in with both feet. This resolution gives the power to the county administrator to cancel long-standing interlocal agreements with cities. This is a huge decision that should not be taken lightly. Interlocal agreements allow agencies to share resources and costs to save taxpayer dollars. For one example, if the county had to provide fire service to areas Blanding now covers, this would be costly for the county and taxpayers. Blanding is much closer to White Mesa, and we are able to service this entire area. In addition to life-saving impacts this has on having fire services closer to residents, it also saves the county dollars by not having to respond to areas in which Blanding can cover. Monticello does the same with the surrounding area. Also, if you choose to charge cities for EMS and 911 services, this creates double taxation for all residents in Blanding, Monticello, and Bluff. I understand that EMS services currently are not viable without taxpayer subsidies. However, please consider giving authority to the EMS director to do a review of all billing that what runs are not being collected. If we have specific locations that are not profitable, and how the county EMS collection rate compares with other EMS services in similar areas. This would give you a good in-depth look at if there is a problem with billing and collections prior to considering charging cities. Since you now have the ability to hold electronic meetings, I would respectfully request that you meet with cities to discuss the county and cities can work together to provide savings to our residents and the consequences of canceling interlocal agreements. Thank you. And that was from Cheryl Bowers. That would be
There's 3 more
them.
on the email that were received before the meeting started.
So,
Was that the last one?
no, that looks like there's 3 more that we received before the meeting on the email. I don't have access to those. Do you have those?
I have those.
So John David can read those into the record.
Okay, this next comment is from Linda Sosa. Please vote no or table 3C, the budget resolution. We need to get through this health crisis, and canceling interlocal agreements that affect fire, EMTs, and police protection put the health and safety of the whole county at risk. Please table it until we all have time to thoughtfully negotiate and look at changes. Next one is, my name is Jennifer Widensee. I am a San Juan County resident. I am concerned about consent agenda items lettered F and G. I have felt very little representation in our county over the 15 years that I have been a resident in northern San Juan County. This lack of representation has been an item of contention in our community. My feeling is that all appointments to county boards should be open for discussion to ensure balanced representation. I need to hear that discussion to feel confident in the decisions made. I ask that items F and G be removed from the consent agenda. Thank you for your consideration. Jennifer Widensee, Moab. Last one. Monet Clark. Greetings, commissioners. Thank you for guiding the county in the COVID-19 outbreak situation. Your leadership and steadying hand help all citizens. First, my heartfelt thanks for all the leadership during this COVID-19 epidemic in San Juan County. Second, I ask you to remove items 2F and 2G from today's consent agenda. Move these appointments to County Board of Health and Board of Water Conservancy District to the discussion and action portion of today's meetings. Appointment of citizens to county boards, special districts, etc. should never be considered routine and unworthy of discussion. Appointments always deserve discussion of recommended applicant. The identification of all applicants by name and individual vote. Thank you, Monet Clark, Spanish Valley. And that's all.
Okay, Commissioner, those are all
Thank you very
that
much.
we're aware of.
Now back to our resolution. We have a motion and a second, and we have some recommended language. So the new language, bring all those into the record.
Okay, so the new language is in two locations. Eighth whereas, so the Chief Administrative Officer is directed to notify all cities and towns within the county that the county will be renegotiating the interlocal agreements which require county participation and city participation in services such as airport, capital maintenance, road maintenance, snow removal, and any other covenant therewithin, including the allocation of additional county transit room tax funding, allocations based on available budgets, which will be reallocated to shore up the county's budget. So there's that one. And then the next one, at the end of the sixth whereas, the Chief Administrative Officer is directed to negotiate those elements in the interlocal agreements related specifically to emergency-related services such as fire, emergency medical service, and 911 dispatch in the form of emergency management assistance compacts, which will be mutually beneficial to the cities, towns, and citizens. And we will also work to develop a fee schedule acceptable to the cities and towns to help fund said services. And then, yeah, that was it. And we have just the regular language on there that Commissioner Gray Eyes had recommended that's in the final whereas regarding the budget.
Any language that's being recommended by either the county commissioner is important enough to be read into the records, because those are the action items. Okay, commissioners, we have a motion and a second, and we have the new language that's read into the record with the comments from the community. Any second thoughts or any other recommendation to that? If there be none, nowhere in this resolution does it talk about the intergovernmental agreement between the parties in the small towns, right?
It does.
So it talks about the interlocal agreements, but we'll renegotiate all of those.
Yes, we're going to renegotiate all of those. Okay, then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. We've done with item C. Now, AT&T tax requests. Read that into the record, Mac.
Okay, this is more of one of those things that is for your knowledge and also for a discussion today. We've received notice that AT&T, they have actually requested from the tax commission to change their tax structure from centrally assessed to publicly assessed. Within AT&T branch, there is the digital TV. Let me get to it just so I can make sure. So you've got WB Games Incorporated. You also have Direct TV, that it's a part of the overall AT&T umbrella. They're wanting to change from centrally assessed to publicly assessed, which will reduce the amount of tax that we collect from AT&T Holdings. This was critical for us, and we received notice and asking if the county was willing to participate in recommending that they remain centrally assessed on the tax structure. If they're able to change, then like I mentioned, we'll receive less tax from them, but also this opens the door for other telecommunication companies to then go from centrally assessed, which is a higher tax revenue that we receive, to publicly assessed, which is less, but it would also require our assessor to do more work on assessing these companies or corporations. These are multi-million-dollar companies that by rights on their side, they're looking for ways to save, but they shouldn't be trying to save at the burden of county citizens. So we'd like to not only follow this lawsuit, but also participate in making sure that they stay as centrally assessed instead of switching. And so I don't know if you guys have any concerns of this continuing on. It's about $6.50 for each $100 that an attorney would spend, but so far we've got, I think there was 15 counties that were joining this effort to prevent this change.
Motion for discussion?
I make a motion.
Motion by Commissioner Adams. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Kendall?
So, commissioners, if you remember, we've talked about the central assessed tax litigation a couple of times. I've provided you with the documentation about how we're billed on that, and we've had a couple of conversations in some public meetings about that situation, and that's where this falls. My recommendation would be that we do want to participate in this. The $6.50 out of every 100 that was mentioned by Matt, that also indicates that 6.5% of their central assessed taxes therefore go to San Juan County, and so that's going to be quite a bit of money. It's also that we should receive from their taxes. I think it's also important to note that if they're allowed to break free, Matt touched on it a little bit. I just wanted to reiterate: if they're allowed to get away from the central assessed tax structure, it's going to require San Juan County to our assessor's office to assess their properties and for a company like this, that is very difficult to do, and it requires probably a lot more training than our assessor's office has ever needed to have, because they just haven't needed to do this type of assessment. Also, companies, the big companies, the whole central assessed litigation that we're involved in and have been for years, is because the larger companies, the pipeline companies, the telecommunication companies, they challenge their tax rate just about every year. And if a company like AT&T was allowed to break off and not be centrally assessed anymore, then they could challenge their assessment, their tax assessment with San Juan County directly, rather than taking on all of the counties at the same time. Litigations, instead of paying 6.5% of the litigation costs, we would be responsible to pay 100% of that litigation cost, and it would get very pricey very quickly. And so while we're trying to limit outside litigation costs, this is one of those that in the long run, paying 6.5% to try to keep them in the central assessed structure is going to be cheaper in the long run and in the short term, quite frankly, than the county being forced to pay 100% of those litigation costs in the future. So it would be my recommendation that this is something that we would want to do.
Thank you very much, Kendall.
I have a comment,
Opening
Kenneth.
party. Want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, anytime centrally assessed properties are removed, it shifts the burden of the tax to the individual homeowner. So I think that's my understanding anyway. Kendall, and maybe I'm not correct, but that's the way I've understood it in the past. So if they can get relief from being centrally assessed, it falls back on the individual homeowner in San Juan County.
It absolutely could. Just to verify it, the money that these companies through the central assessed are paying, that money would have to come from somewhere, and so yeah, it's likely that it would then fall on the households and quite frankly even local businesses as well. The ones that are locally assessed would have to pick up the slack.
Willie, want to weigh in on this? If not, all those in favor?
It sounds bad. I agree with you.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 3, unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, Matt, the next item?
Next item is the maternal and child health funding amendment. This is an amendment that we receive every year for the original contract for maternal and child health funding. This allows us to continue to receive health funding for these services that the public health department provides. I don't know, Kirk, if you have any additional comments you want to make for this. It's a routine amendment that we continue to do every year since 2016. So we're on amendment number 5.
Yeah, I will just state they've increased our funding amount slightly. There are 2 changes in this contract. The first is that they used to give us a lump sum amount to accomplish all the goals, and now this is going to be changing to a reimbursement for deliverables contract. And the second piece is that they've increased our funding, which puts all the responsibilities of maintaining a local coalition on my nursing director, which I think, Mac, is something that we'd previously discussed. I wanted to give her a potential slight increase. It wouldn't be very much, but a couple of dollars an hour, because this new contract takes a local early childhood coalition that was previously done by a local nonprofit and assigns that as an additional requirement for us to oversee. which is a fairly significant burden for our nursing director. But other than those two changes, it's pretty much business as usual on this contract, and is a continuation of what we do routinely.
So is there additional money, Kirk, that would be spent on the children, or is most of it going to go to the nursing director?
Okay, hold on, Commissioner, they're still discussing there was a question that Commissioner Adams had of Kirk.
I'd like to establish a motion for the discussion before we get into it for the record.
So
So
motion.
Bruce made a motion, I have a second.
Okay,
The additional money, Kirk, is it being spent on the kids, or is it being spent on the director?
Commissioner Gray Eyes had mentioned, I think Commissioner Gray Eyes, didn't you second that? On the discussion?
Going twice?
Commissioner Gray Eyes, are you there? Commissioner Gray Eyes. So it might just be, so Commissioner Gray Eyes, he's not at his phone right now, so we've got Commissioner
On the third call,
Adams
I will
and-
call this particular item out of order. But since there's no gray eyes, I will second that for the discussion. Go ahead.
Kirk, did you hear my question?
I didn't hear the question because there was somebody in the background talking, so if you could repeat it.
The additional money, is it being spent just to increase the wages of the nurse, or is some of it being spent on children health?
It is, the additional money is for us to oversee an early childhood coalition and maintain partner relationships so that we can plan for early childhood health in the community. So that additional funding, I had suggested to Mac that a portion of that be used for additional wages, but some of that would need to go to support those collaborative meetings. Typically, I think we would provide lunch for local partners to provide input, that sort of expense. Did that answer the question?
Yes?
Okay.
Any other comment, Bruce?
No, that's fine.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And so at this point in time, call for the question.
Aye?
Aye. Welcome back, Rory.
Thanks,
Okay,
guys.
next are the CR 230 road repair and crossing agreement.
Okay, this agreement here, we placed it on the agenda thinking that everything was finalized on it, but there's still some things that needed to be negotiated on this agreement. This area is just right behind the landfill, I believe. There's some things that we want to work out on this agreement, so we're asking at this time that it be tabled. Kendall, did you want to make a comment with this?
Yeah, it's not the road by the landfill, it's the old Decker
Okay,
that
thanks for that correction.
that some of you may be familiar with, but yes, I think this one needs some additional time on it. We thought it would be ready for today, so we put it on the agenda, but I think it needs to be taken from the agenda and brought back at a later date when we have a chance to finish working out the kinks in it.
Okay, commissioners, do I have a motion?
Do you want a motion to table it?
Motion to table.
Okay, we do have a second, and we heard it from our attorney that the recommendation is to table the item. What is your pleasure?
Now I vote aye.
Okay, concur. Willie?
Did you hear me? I motion to table.
So Willie motion to table.
All right. And that's, you concur, Bruce, right?
Yes.
All right. All those in favor in tabling the item?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that, commissioners, it looks like we're down at the number 4, which is the commissioner's calendar. I don't think it's a sport, but I think the audience or community in Kennewick County are looking for some answers in a lot of ways and looking for comfort in this time of pandemic. So either one of you, Commissioner, would like to weigh in on this? Thank you very much. Once again, all of you that are viewing, thank you for getting on to view and also to hear our commission meeting. Please stay home and take care of yourself, and also try not to be all over. I think the Navajo Nation and other parts of the counties are going to lockdown. On my site, the first is the time when the elders, they get paid, and it sounds like everybody went out on a shopping spree on the first, and after that, Farmington, New Mexico became a red zone, and it sounds like the new numbers of exposure to the COVID-19 has raised up to 300 something individual on the Navajo reservation. So please, and like our president of the United States had said, please bear with us. We will get over these complicated times, and hopefully we'll be back in the normal ship here pretty soon.
We just lost Commissioner Maryboy off of the conference call. Commissioner Gray Eyes, that puts you in charge of the meeting. Do you have any final comments? We're on the commissioner comment section. If not, we can.
I was just encouraging people to stay home and practice what the health organization has put out as a precaution, also saving lives. Those things need to be highlighted again every day in order to deter and decrease the spread of the disease. So that would be my statement.
Commissioner Adams?
No, I just want to again express my gratefulness to the emergency people who are dealing with this and the hard work and their ability to keep things up and running and functioning and encourage people to stay home and stay safe.
Okay, looks like we have Commissioner Maryboy back on the conference call.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Bruce. So Willie, you have anything to comment on? If not, commissioners, thank you very much.
Hold on just a second.
And those of you,
We've been busy all these days, so being confined, communication is very critical. Not enough is being done, and you sit there wondering what's going on the other side of the mountain. So we need to call each other more frequently and communicate what's on the day to day. Thank you.
thank you. Some of us couldn't be on the view screen. Particularly me, I live in an area where it's got a really bad service, so that's the only reason why I only called in. We've been working on the video almost all week, and we couldn't figure a way to get a better service. So this is the only way I can get to it. So thank you very much, commissioners. And again, Mac, I guess at this point in time, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Commissioner Gray, aye. Second by Commissioner Adams. Any other comment or question before the adjournment? If there be none, all those in favor and adjourn.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, commissioners.